I'm Jamie Seeker, and this is What It Takes. Each episode, I sit down with real business owners to talk about their journey, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Welcome to What It Takes. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Rajeev Mudumba. Rajeev is a powerhouse in the world of leadership and business transformation. He has over 24 years of experience driving growth and innovation across industries like HealthTech, InsurTech, and healthcare services, from leading global teams across the US, Europe, and India, and scaling businesses to hundreds of millions in revenue. Rajeev knows exactly what it takes to succeed on a massive scale. So, in this episode, we're going to unpack Rajiv's playbook for leading across borders, his expertise in navigating mergers and acquisitions, and the lessons that he's learned along the way. Whether you're looking to grow your business, expand your leadership skills, or gain insights into the world of high stakes business transformations, you are in for a treat today. So, let's dive into the conversation. Hi, Rajiv.
Hey there. Thank you so much for having me, Jamie.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming. I wanted to just kick off and start with your journey. What inspired you to pursue a career in leadership and business transformations?
Sure. So I've been in the business world for the last 24 years, so a lot of things a lot of things happen when unplanned. Nobody plans a career to say that, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. You probably will, but then life will have other plans for you. So, I came to the US about 24 years ago, came as a student. As luck would have it, I fell into, benefits administration, healthcare. That's the space I've been in. That's where I've learned, grown over the years. And, there's a lot of journey that I reflect on, my own journey, and of course, others that I come across. And I feel there's so many lessons for people to learn from others' experiences where you can find shortcuts to your own career path. So that's where the interest in leadership and business transformation came from. As luck would have it, I've been with startups, mid-sized companies, large companies. I've been with a lot of companies where I've turned them around and then we sold them to someone else. So all of those are the experiences that come forth.
Wow, that's really cool. And obviously, you coming here 24 years ago and just being exposed to the bigger world out there, I think that's a bit unique just as somebody who was born and raised and grew up in the United States. I had a bit more of a worldly perspective because I had immigrant, relatives and things like that. But I think that it gives us a unique perspective when we're actually coming from another country. So, talk a little bit about building global teams. What are the biggest challenges and opportunities when managing teams across continents like that?
Sure. So I think one thing is, times are changing, right? So the world's not the same that it was, forget 24 years, maybe 5 or 10 years ago as well. So when we look at what's happening, and I always look at the East and the West and do the comparison there. About 10, 15 years ago, the East was trying to catch up, wanted to do things. The work-life balance was a distant dream, but then the work ethic was really strong. So you could find cheaper resources, really hardworking and well-educated, on the eastern side of the world. And that's what we leveraged on the western side to build things up. Now where we stand is things have changed. East has been catching up. And when you look at the generations that have come forth, people in their 20s as well as 30s, they have actually grown in a world that knew internet and technology. So for them, that's second nature. People prior to that, they probably grew in a world without tech and then they got introduced to it. So you got to look at the balance of all of those things. But today, um, there's not as much culture shock when you try to find resources in a different country, a distant country somewhere else than it was about 10, 15 years ago. 10, 15 years ago, there would be a culture shock. There was the aspect of making sure that the resources got trained in the norms and the ways business is conducted in the West versus the East. Now it's kind of getting to be much more similar, so it's faster. But at the same time, the costs have grown as well. So you got to be really diligent as to, are you still getting the biggest bang for the buck? That's what you look at when you're trying to grow internationally. But you're not just doing it for the service aspect of it. You're also doing it for what business can I get from the distant countries that I'm looking into. So that's where when you're building teams, and and then the pandemic, it just accelerated the whole aspect of embracing remote work. And so now today there's much more, people are more comfortable trying to find resources anywhere, so long as they have the skill set.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you talked a little about are those cultural nuances.
Mm.
And that kind of stands out to me a bit because I see that a lot as well in working with other countries. How do cultural differences impact leadership? And what strategies do you use to kind of build those gaps? Because you talked about it, those gaps are getting smaller, but to some extent they're still there and you've
Right.
had enough experience growing it over time. So what kind of strategies did you use to bridge those?
Sure. I think universally there are certain standards that we need to make sure that we all adhere to, the professional standards of working with each other, no matter where you have your team in the world. So that's one aspect of it. The second thing is, what you want for yourself or your staff in your home country or your home city. You should be willing to give those kinds of things to other people wherever they are. So that's one other thing. The third thing is, from a culture standpoint, every country is different. The diversity and the ethical background that they bring is different, and it's important to learn that, to make sure that you respect their norms, traditions, and you expect the same from them. So when you do that, people on the other side, you're trying to keep a motivated team out there. You're trying to get the best for the company, as well as you want to give the best to them as employees. So, but when you do all these things, it kind of creates a culture of mutual respect across the world, no matter where your employees are. They could be working remotely, they could be in an office, doesn't matter. We came from a world where it was important to sit in a seat and warm up your seat 8 hours every single day. We're moving away from that. Now it's all outcome based. I could have somebody sitting in a village in India, and so long as we both are clear as to what their goals are and what's the expectations in terms of output and outcomes, and they meet it, I could care less if they worked 8 hours or if they worked about 4 hours and gotten it done. Right. So that's where we're going. And that respect, when employees on the other side start seeing it from a company and from your leaders, they're all prepped up and pumped up to churn out more than they should normally do.
That is what we're seeing as well, but you just hit on some leadership gold there, building a culture on mutual respect. That's amazing. And the other thing that you touched on in that first comment was going and doing business overseas to also do business, not just to what can I get out of this from a resources standpoint to help internally, but how can I actually drive and grow business as well? So driving growth in regards to that, what were the key factors behind scaling businesses to such impressive revenues? Like, how did you get to that point?
Sure. So I think, when you're a startup, you have an idea, a dream, and then you're trying to build on it. Um, when you go from a 0 to 1 kind of a journey, that's a different journey. There's a lot of resilience needed. There's a lot of stubbornness needed. People might call you stupid, but you got to be stupid for your own good, and you got to stick to it, through the thick and the thin. When you get to the 1 to 10 journey, that's a different journey. Now, 0 to 1, you were probably wearing a lot of different hats. You were doing it all yourself. 1 to 10, you got to start creating that team. You got to start building a team that you could rely on. You have a certain set of strengths and a whole set of weaknesses. Embrace that. And then fill your weaknesses with people who have the strengths where your weakness lies. And then build that trust, the mutual trust, and then rely on them to go and execute. So, trust and verify, but rely on them to do it. So when you do that, then you're going from 1 to 10. Now, 10 to 100, or anything about that, is a totally different journey. Now you're asking your people that you rely on to also go out and do the same thing, to build their own teams. So nobody does it alone, right? There might be one person at the helm who takes the credit or who takes the fall when things go wrong, but it's always a team effort.
Nobody does it alone. That is a absolutely true statement. And I think one of the things that you have to think about in that growth stage is your partnerships. And in this case, you did a lot with mergers and acquisitions. So you talked a little bit about culture and building that culture of mutual respect, but you don't necessarily know when you're merging with somebody or acquiring a new company what their culture is or what things they're building on. So what's your approach to navigating that complex relationship of mergers and acquisitions?
So that's where due diligence comes in. You need to spend as much time as possible in the due diligence where you're looking at who the company is, what their financials are, what have they built, who are their people, what's their culture, what have they done over the years. And I've been in situations where, I was the smaller company going and acquiring a company 3 times our size. And when you do that, right at the get-go, there's a certain level of animosity. Think about it. A company 3 times your size is looking at this teeny weeny company coming and acquiring you, what's going to happen? The leadership, the people, the rank and file, everybody's pretty much up in arms against you. And I've spent about 2 years in that kind of a company, really building trust through rank and file, working with leaderships to get them attuned. In many cases, letting leadership go in order to get the right leaders in place. Why? Because they were just headstrong and stubborn, and they kind of looked at it as their own fiefdom. You'll have those, and then every time you let somebody go, you're kind of the team under them starts thinking about, can they trust you or not. So you got to rebuild that trust all over again. And the way I did that was really not looking outside for the next leader to take over for the person that left, but looking internally to how do I bring people up? How do I promote them? Who can take charge? Who understands where we're trying to go? That kind of stuff. And I've spent about 2 years in this particular instance, going from office to office, location to location, meeting people, rank and file, as well as the leaders, to turn the company around where we could really we could assimilate it, everybody under one umbrella, but at the same time, we could also make sure that we were profitable and the business was predictable.
But that's great. I think, you talked about when it was just you building that culture off of trust, but when it's acquiring a new company and you're pretty much taking in a brand new team that don't trust you, how do you build that while still doing things that maybe they causes a bit of uncertainty? But I think one of the things that you also see is that if you do eliminate some of those leaders that are holding you back, sometimes it is a trust builder because they see it too. And
Right.
so for the people who are on board with your vision and who will kind of humble themselves and get on that, it can be a trust builder, but there's also a lot of things that happen behind closed doors with leadership that they may not know about. So yeah, it can be really scary and it can make them think, well, if that person's going to go, then what does that mean for me? And so I think that's
Absolutely.
really great leadership strategy is to say, okay, well, let me see how I could raise these guys up. And we've got all the resources we need right here. Why do we need to look outside? And let's, and maybe they're not there yet, but hey, we can help grow them into those seats. So that's amazing.
See, one thing, sorry, just
No, go ahead.
one other thing that I did want to mention there is, business is a business. We talk about culture and all that, and a lot of people say, hey, treat them as your family. Family is different. A business is different. I believe that, right? So in a business, it's all about, mutual respect. One thing we talked about, which is also in a family. But then let's say your son goes and does something wrong, you'll admonish him, you'll tell them what the right thing to do. But if he goes and does it consistently 2 or 3 times, you'll try to figure out how to get him on the right track, but you would not leave his hand, right? Same thing with in a business. It's different. You got to look at it from an outcome. The foremost thing is the business. How do you make that work? And there'll be instances where you'll have to let people go. There'll be instances where you'll have to make changes that not everybody will like, but they have to be done for the good of the business. And you need to be ready to take a call to do that. It's not about all warm and fuzzy all the time.
But sometimes I think the most beneficial thing you can do, not just for the business, but for that person or for that employee, is to be true and honest about that
Absolutely.
performance and to say, hey, look, this was our expectation, and we've worked with you on trying to get to that expectation, but you are just simply not meeting it, and we've got to part ways. And I think sometimes that's in their best interest too, because there's no improvement or there's no growth that happens if you just allow them to continue to stay there just simply because, oh, they've been here for a long time.
That's
So
that's very
there's nothing that you weren't saying that I don't wholly agree with. Is that one thing I learned early on is I used to kind of see and treat my teams like family. Oh, we're like family. And I had a mentor come in and said, no, the heck you're not. You are not family. You have a business to run, and it is not unconditional. It is very conditional. And if all of the conditions are met, absolutely, it can be like a familial relationship, and you can have a lot of those same, mutual respect
absolutely.
relationships. However, when those conditions are not met, it is my job to step up and execute where, like you said, we do it a little bit differently when it's not business. Yeah,
And then there's a way to do it too, right? So you got to be respectful of the other person. You got to see what you can do to help them out. It's not just cutting cords and saying thank you very much. There are things. There's ways that you can do where you still ensure that bridges are not burnt.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, it's just because it is the end of our business relationship, working relationship, you still have a relationship. It doesn't mean that all things need to be severed necessarily if that's not what both parties want. So I think, you do consider that these are real people that you're working with. But I think when you put faces to names, to actual people, not just numbers in your organization, that does kind of separate you from, I think, every other business. And so that's kind of what I'm hearing for you. So, what is your guiding principle in effective and impactful leadership? And we're talking a lot about relationships and also, having to do a job and move things. So, what's your philosophy and approach to that?
Very simple. It's treat others the way you'd like to be treated.
There's nothing more to say to that. That's gold. So one of the things that we like to do on this show, and I do it in every episode, is have our signature question, which is what advice would you give aspiring leaders or entrepreneurs looking to expand their business globally and really just telling them what it takes?
Sure. So there's this question that I've always seen, which is the passion and purpose, right? There's a lot of people that kind of struggle with passion and purpose. Hey, my passion lies here, but the work that I do is here. How do I bring my passion and purpose together? So, to all of those people, passions can change. One thing I've seen, passions can evolve, and you get more clarity on your purpose as you keep executing, doing what you do every day. And sometimes you fall into something and it can become your passion over a period of time. It's like a learned or acquired taste kind of a thing, right? You're not born with a passion. And then, yes, there are certain skills that you're good at. There are certain things you're good at. There's certain things you like, you dislike. All of that is debatable. So that's one thing. So really get to understand that everything, you can like what you're doing. You can make a passion out of it. Versus if you have a passion and you have the opportunity to pursue it, go do it. And then the other thing is, like I said, it's okay to be stubborn and sometimes it's okay to be stupid. When something's failing, you've been trying hard and there's a time to let go. But if you're the kind of a person who doesn't want to let go and you have a vision that others cannot appreciate yet, just be at it. Keep doing what you're doing and it'll come true. You'll make sure that you make a dent in it. So don't always listen to what everyone says around you. Make your own decisions, consume the information, be attentive, have attention, but then make your own decisions. And then there'll be a day when you'll be successful, and then others will come back asking you, "Hey, how did you do it?"
Yeah, that's great. And sometimes you just have to do things that need to be done, whether you like them or not, so that you can do the things that you're passionate about.
Absolutely.
Wow, what an incredible conversation, Rajiv. From navigating cultural nuances to driving multi-million dollar growth, you've shown us pretty much what it takes to lead across borders, master the art of mergers and acquisitions, all those kinds of things. So, listeners, if you're as inspired as I am, make sure to check out Rajiv's work. Rajeev, where can listeners find and connect with you?
A couple of different places. The best place is LinkedIn. You can come and connect with me, follow me on LinkedIn. That's where most of my social media presence is. Um, I do have a podcast, by the way, called Plan B Success. Where I share a lot of my experiences. That's a good place to go find me. And right now, I'm working with a care management company. It's called Kui Health. That's another place you can find me.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thanks again for joining us and sharing your incredible insights. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to What It Takes. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who'd love to hear this story. So until next time, keep building, growing, and leading. See you soon. Would you or someone you know like to be featured on this podcast? Our applications are now open. Apply today at seekersolution.com and click on the podcast link to get started.